Bill Gates, thank you so much for speaking with the BBC here at the African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. You recently announced that you're virtually giving away all your wealth, and you've given some more context to that here at the African Union, and effectively winding down the Gates Foundation by 2045. Now, of your planned spend over the next 20 years, 200 billion US dollars, how much of that, if you're able to approximate, is coming to African projects, and why?
Yeah, if you take the challenge of Africa, the majority of that money would be to work on that. So that'll include, funding scientists all over the world to come up with, say, HIV vaccine, TB vaccine. But a lot of it will be helping with the delivery here. Pilot programs to learn what works. We've been giving to Gavi, that the majority of that money comes to Africa. We've been giving to Global Fund. Now we do more direct work with our offices here. So Africa will be the majority of where we hope to improve things during our 20-year period.
As drilling directly into some of the sectors you support on the African continent, healthcare, climate change, education, there's one, however, that has become a big talking point in more recent years, and that's unemployment on the African continent. The numbers are worrying. The World Bank data as of 2023 putting Kenya, Nigeria at over 6% unemployment rate, South Africa a whopping 32%. Is this something that concerns you as a philanthropist, and have you been thinking through potential solutions to address this?
Only the things that you can't solve with government and private sector is where you bring philanthropy in. So things like creating an HIV vaccine, and there's not a market for that. Even some of the things we do in agriculture, you saw the productivity we're bringing with new seeds or better genetics for chicken or livestock. And so, there will be demand for jobs if people get the right health and the right education. Then you'll have, the capacity that serves the market.
We've had many people question the necessity of aid in this day and age, and whether aid breeds, over-reliance on aid money, to build your company, and does it shield African governments from accountability? So what are your thoughts on that it's time for the African continent to shift more towards what investment-led growth would do for it?
Well, aid as a percentage of the economy won't be gigantic, but if you believe that babies shouldn't be infected with HIV, and aid is helping you with that, if you want all the world's science to help cure sickle cell disease, and that's not going to get organized except by aid that brings those scientific resources. If you want the best seed work in the world so that you go from a quarter of the agricultural productivity to world levels there, aid plays a unique role. And anybody who says aid versus something else, that's a silly discussion.
So here at the African Union, as you give your speech, you reference the crisis that the whole world and the continent finds itself in with the cuts. There have been global aid cuts, but more specifically from the United States by the Trump administration, shutting down of USAID, pulling out of WHO, amongst others. Do you think philanthropists like yourself can fill that gap?
Well, the numbers are way too large for philanthropy to fill that gap. We're going to see a dramatic increase in children's deaths because we're not going to have those capacities. Caring about people, wanting health systems that prevent pandemics that could go global or be much worse than COVID was. I think there's a lot of reasons that I'll certainly make the case that aid, which is less than 1% of the government spending, that it makes a lot of sense.
And, even as you reflect on that, you understand the real world impact of these aid cuts from the work you've done over the last 25 years. Are you willing to use your considerable influence to possibly seek audience with President Trump again? Maybe ask him to consider a more gradual pullout from some of these programs, Gavi with vaccinations, for example?
No, I'll make a strong case that the U.S. should stay involved in Gavi, that it should be a leader on helping with polio eradication, that these HIV programs, some efficiencies can be gained. And so, if we were more in the range of 20 or 30% reduction, I think we could minimize the damage and we wouldn't see a dramatic increase. In fact, with the new innovations, then we could continue the trend we've seen. So I'll be as loud as I can be.
Let's talk about Africa's billionaires. The numbers say that there are about 22 of them last year. And more broadly, are billionaires good for society?
I do think that society should expect anybody even well below $1 billion, even say millions of dollars, that you become very philanthropic. If you're in that top 10%, you should have a clear plan about how you give back to society. And so I do a lot of work to encourage philanthropy.
These billionaires on the African continent are getting richer as per last year's numbers as well. Is that as a result of African development or African inequality, if you were to give your take on this?
There are large-scale challenges in Africa that you want people to see success and be drawn in. Each individual billionaire can say, okay, is their business giving back to society in a particular way?
You play an interesting role because you attract a lot of media attention. And even just a regular internet checkup shows a lot of websites that fact-check misinformation, disinformation, myths, and put proper information out there. Sometimes have to do that regarding articles that speak about you or that link you. I actually have a few here. I don't know if you've seen many of these to do with, the COVID-19 vaccine, links with microchips and links with companies like I think there was one here, Center for Global Human Population Reduction. There's no such thing, is what another article said, and so forth. Do you get to see some of these articles? Do you get to read them? And why do you think you attract so many conspiracy theories, Bill?
The internet allows 8 billion people to say whatever they want. It is tragic if the misunderstandings, like the importance of vaccinating children, if it leads people to not seek vaccines. And in every country, we get some vaccine skepticism, and we have to have the leaders who are trusted in that countries be the one who speak out about that. There was stuff about vaccines being used to track people's location, which, you have to laugh about that. Why, how would that work? And B, why would anybody care to know people's locations? So it's a crazy world in terms of all the things that get written. And I mostly think about that in terms of people seeking good health care.
You will be spending time in 2 countries here on the African continent in your time here, and you probably speak with other African leaders on phone. Have any of them expressed concerns to you about the latest tariffs from the United States? 20 African countries hard hit by them, big discussion around the world. In fact, I think this week the US is supposed to sit down with China and discuss them further. How much damage in the few weeks that they've been on do you think African economies may have felt, or the US itself, as a result of these tariffs?
Well, the U.S. traditionally had the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which set very low, often zero tariff rates for things coming in from Africa. And the numbers, unfortunately, are small enough that that's no big threat to some domestic group. And so I'll certainly be a voice that says that we should maintain very low or zero tariffs for countries in Africa. There was an expectation that we'd continue to be generous there, and helping these economies grow is a fantastic contribution, because then they'll collect more taxes and they can fund their health care and education in a more generous way. So yeah, there were a set of proposed tariffs that would have been very tough on Africa. And although most people are focusing on other trade relationships, I'll be one of the voices that says, hey, wait a minute, let's not raise tariffs on Africa.
Any anticipated meetings with President Trump in the near horizon? Anything you're hoping for?
I'm sure in the next 3 or 4 months I'll get a chance to share my thoughts with him.